Okay, so I'm going to try to get through this a little bit more quickly because there's a video that I would like you guys to see. If we don't have time to show the video in the class, there's a link for it in the slides so you can watch it yourself later, but hopefully we'll get a chance to watch at least a little bit of the video in class. So today we're talking about racism. So what is racism? Last class I said that Watson was a racist, right? Why? What was racist about it? What is racism?
The belief that different groups have different abilities.
Yeah, it's basically the idea that different ethnic or racial groups have different abilities. Some people are smart, some people are lazy, some people are, right? And identifying that some people with a particular racial group. If we could say ethnocentrism, perhaps, there are other isms as well that basically follow the same model, that a particular type of people have a particular type of ability that they're good at or bad at or something else. So the belief that all members of each race possess characteristics or abilities specific to that race, that's the Google definition of racism. For example, Turks are different from Americans. This is like potentially a racist statement if we think that Turks have different abilities than Americans. Do Turks have different abilities or characteristics than Americans do?
But the sentence does not say that.
The sentence doesn't say that, but if we go and ask how are they different?
Language. They speak different languages.
They speak different languages. So you're just making a comment about Turkey as a whole, which doesn't necessarily reflect a difference in ability of the different groups to speak language, right? But what would be a racist example? When I first came to Turkey,
Turks are smarter than.
Turks are smarter than Americans. Yeah, that would be a racist type of comment. What do we call the individual beliefs about how the races differ? So racism as a whole is the idea that there are differences between the stereotypes. That's exactly right. So stereotypes are widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. So what you just said, the Turks are smarter than Americans, this is a stereotype. I don't know how widely held this is, but it is a potential stereotype that someone could hold. Stereotypes are basically social schemas, right?
Yeah.
Door people act one way, doctors act another way, Turks act a different way, black people act a different way. These are all social schemas. And they don't necessarily have to be a negative idea. So it doesn't have to be that Americans are stupid, right? So after last class, where I'm making this mistake about which countries lived in Africa, or were part of Africa, like I blame this on American public education if you're friends with me on Facebook, right? So yeah, sorry, stupid Americans, we don't, know about politics and geography outside of America. So that's a negative idea, but not all stereotypes and racial beliefs have to be negative. So there are ideas that Asians are smart. This is a positive stereotype, but it's still racist. And I guess positive would depend on who you ask. So some Asians might not like the idea that you're just saying all of them are smart. But when I was in, 7th or 8th grade, I was on a math league team. You guys have like math competitions where people go to different schools and then they like try to answer math questions and they compete? It's like football but with math. I did this when I was in 7th or 8th grade. And I used to do pretty well because I like math. In my school, there weren't really many Asian kids, and I didn't really interact with many Asian kids. And one time, we had a school come, and there were like several Asian kids from that school. And I like totally freaked out. And I'm like, oh crap, man. I'm gonna, I can't win this time. I'm gonna lose. They have Asians. They're totally gonna kick my butt. And they ended up kicking my butt, but it wasn't because they were so much better than I was. They actually performed, okay. But I was so freaked out that I performed much less than I could have. What was I experiencing? Remember Yerkes Dodson law? If you're too aroused, then you won't perform as well. So I was busy freaking out about the fact that there were Asians present instead of worrying about the actual math. Blacks are athletic. that are so athletic. It's still a stereotype. It's still indicative of racism. At the core, stereotypes and racism are built on the idea of categorization, which is basically classifying a group of people or things arranged by a class or a category. So, you guys are students. I have arranged you by your category, right? You're a student, you're a student, you're a student. So it's not Zainab and Allah and Abdullah, it's students. Racism categorizes members of one race together and attributes different stereotypes to the race as a whole. So, does anyone have a stereotype? Or maybe, I don't want to put the finger on any one particular person. But is anyone aware of any stereotypes that, like, Americans are dirty?
People think Americans are dirty?
Yeah, do people think Americans are dirty here?
I thought it was French.
The French are dirty.
No, Arabs.
Arabs.
They said no.
Not you, of course not you. No, definitely not.
He's a really
I want to talk a little bit about the dirtiness of Turks. Turks are dirty. This has been a really interesting source of conversation with some of my Turkish friends because we've talked about cultural differences in cleanliness. And they've pointed out time and time again how dirty we Americans are. Why are we dirty? Well, if you come and see what my kids do when we go outside, like they lay on the sidewalk, or we're in some store, we go to the grocery store, and they lay down on the floor and play, and everyone's like, oh, get up, it's not clean, get up, right? Or so we go and we play with the dogs. Lots of Americans have dogs as pets, and they're like, dude, dogs are filthy animals, you guys are dirty. When we go to Turkish people's houses, what do most of you do when you enter? When you go into a Turkish person's house, you take off your shoes. Why? Because the shoes aren't clean. House is clean. Shoes aren't clean. Please take off your shoes. You come to my home, you start to take off your shoes, I'll say, keep them on. I'm wearing my shoes, so my floors are dirty, so you better keep your shoes on too. So they think that we're dirty. There was this girl who came over who was helping my kids with Turkish as they were helping her with English. So this was a reciprocal altruism type thing going on. Or maybe not, because they were both expecting something in return at the time. So bad example of reciprocal altruism. Anyway, my wife was so embarrassed. She went up to our bookshelf and she went, so there was dust on the bookshelf. We're filming. We go over to Turkish people's homes for dinner, and like after dinner, like not only do they take their plates away and whatnot, but then they'll come and sweep underneath the table right then. This hasn't happened every time, but it's happened a lot. Okay, we're sweeping up the table. You come over to my house for dinner, we're not going to sweep under the table until the next day. If we get to it the next day. So we Americans were filthy, they say. And I say, what do you mean? You Turks are dirty. So just like 2 days ago, I was outside and Tarek and I, we were walking. And we were like, oh, it's a nice day. Why don't we sit down over there and we'll talk and, you know, whatever. So we went down to where there were some pillows that were free. And as we got to them, we saw like cigarette butts all over the place, and cups, and dishes, and all this stuff, garbage everywhere. And I'm like, dude, this is filthy. And he's like, yeah, man, Turks were dirty. And I go to the sea. During summer break, I take my kids out, and we go to the beach. And there's like a garbage can, you know, just 50 meters away, not too far. And people, they eat their lunch, and then like, they just throw the wrappers next to them, and that's it! So, like, there are some ideas that I have had about the cleanliness of Turkish people, and there are ideas that Turks have had about the cleanliness of Americans by interacting with me. Oh, and also the whole, like, this doesn't apply to all Turks, but like Muslims, the hand washing and the ablutions, like, holy cow, you wash way more than like non-Muslims do. So that's really clean. And then some of the other things, this was, oh, pubic hair. I had no idea. He was saying how Americans were so dirty because we have like armpit hair. And he's like, yeah, man, you know, we shave ours. And I'm like, really? Do you shave down there too? He's like, of course. Otherwise you're dirty. Oh, okay. Anyway, so lots of people have ideas that they attribute sometimes inappropriately. Is it that Americans are dirty? Is it that Turks are dirty? There's something just about being Turk that makes you dirty when you're outside, that you just don't give a crap about where you throw your stuff? Is there something about being American that you just don't give a crap when people come in your home with their shoes on? Is that something fundamental to being Turk or American? Right? When a racist says something like that, that's the idea. There's something inherent in the person. I would argue that it's not something inherent with being Turk, but it's something else. What else could it be? Cultural, yeah. So in America, like back in the 70s, I remember like when I was very young, in the late 70s, early 80s, parks were much dirtier than they are now. Why? Because there has been a huge emphasis on environmentalism. You need to clean up, you need to take care of the earth. And because of this cultural thing, because of what we've been taught, we have changed some of the things that we do. Does that make sense? So if I want to go and say that Turks are dirty and just stop there, I think that's a serious problem, right? All right. Why is categorization useful? Why would this be a good thing at some level, at any level? Can categorization help you?
Yeah.
Can your negative stereotypes help you? Ever?
Categorization doesn't have to be stereotypes, right?
Right.
So it helps like to relate ideas together, we group them so that it's easy to look at it from one group.
Yeah, by grouping things together that are somewhat dissimilar but share a common theme, it's easier sometimes to deal with them as a whole than it is to deal with each of them individually. So I can say, good morning class, right? Instead of saying, good morning, good morning, Sunday, good morning, right? So I treat everyone as a whole, and this reduces the environmental complexities. Is there anything else? Alright, now I get to that video, so I will give them away. They allow us to easily identify and label objects. We can look at something that we may have never seen before and very quickly say, aha, that's a chair. Or aha, that's an orange. Like each person has their own DNA, right? Except for maybe identical twins. So forget identical twins for the moment. But everyone else, they are unique. Genetically, right? So you're different from him, and he's different from her, and she's different from her. Everyone is different. So if everyone is different, potentially then I need to figure out which each one of you are. Are you a human? Oh, wow, she's a human. Are you a human? Yes! Oh, she's a human too. I don't have to ask you guys if you're human or not. I can just guess. I can make inferences because I've come across lots of humans before and I have generalized about what being a human is, and I can sort of categorize you all together, and then I can treat you as a human instead of a cockroach, right? These types of inferences reduce the need for constant relearning. They help us decide, appropriate actions. Sorry, this has been cut off. So what do you do with an orange? If I gave you an orange, do you eat it or do you throw it?
Eat it.
Well, it actually depends on the context. So there's this orange throwing festival where you should throw the oranges, but otherwise you eat the oranges, right? So by being able to figure out that, aha, this is a pointing device for, a computer, then I can go through this even if I've never used this particular one before. Oh, what does this button do? What does this button, right? I'm able to use this information and act appropriately. How is categorization harmful?
It destroys or it eliminates the uniqueness of each object.
Yeah, so if I say that you guys are all students, then I don't recognize, I may not recognize that you're a different student than he is, right? There are differences between you. And different students may need more or less attention. Different students, maybe I should email some students and say, look, you're in danger of failing because you haven't done these assignments. Please do them, right? So if I just treat all the students the same, then I would send those emails to people who are already done, right? So it ignores individual differences and it oversimplifies real complexities. So by saying that Turks are dirty or Americans are dirty, this ignores everything else that might come in to determining whether someone throws a piece of garbage on the side of the road or not, or whether someone shaves their pubic hair or washes, right? These are related to stereotypes. They create difficulties for learning about inaccurate stereotypes. How could it create difficulties for learning about stereotypes that are wrong? Watson said that black people are dumb, right? Does that make it hard for him to learn that maybe black people aren't dumb?
Because stereotype should be, it has something to do with a specific ability.
Okay?
So that means it shouldn't be something that should be categorized. It should be something that has to do with individual.
Right. So if I go and say that black people are dumb, and then I'm trying to hire people to work at my company, who am I going to hire? I'm not going to hire black people if it requires intelligence to do what I'm doing, right? And are there black people who are very intelligent? Yes, of course, absolutely. So I would miss out on this opportunity to potentially employ someone who's really suited for the job. And by not allowing them to participate, I would completely miss out on the opportunity to have my stereotype disconfirmed. Right? That would make it more difficult for me to learn that the stereotype that I actually hold is wrong.
You're talking about what James Watson studied zoology, not psychology.
No, I don't know. If I had to say what James Watson studied, I would say he studied chemistry. Right? Zoology?
Yes. And at the end of the day, he got the Nobel physician.
Yeah, there's no Nobel Prize for psychology.
No, for
but Watson, yeah, physiology.
Like 20 blacks that have gotten that before him. Like 20 blacks, they've gotten Nobel Prize in physiology. Because I read about it.
He did a research.
Yes.
I don't know if he's a zoologist or not. All I know is that he won a Nobel Prize, which most people would say would qualify him as being a smart individual. And the point was that smart people have racist and stereotypical views. Smart people often fail to recognize the real complexity inherent in the world. I fail to recognize complexities in the real world. Lots of times. And this can lead to problems. So there was a student who recently made a comment on Facebook, and I commented on their comment, and then the student just disappeared. And I'm like, oh, where'd they go? And so I went through my friend list. I thought maybe the student changed their name or something. No, I couldn't find anyone like the student. So then I did some more searching around and I found the student. But like where there were other people and their links and I could click and go see their page, for this student there was nothing. And I'm like, oh yeah, this student defriended me. Not only has a student defriended me, they blocked me. Okay, so people who defriend and block people, right? I had the stereotype about not being able to click on their thing, which indicates that they blocked me, right? Okay, so I have a stereotype that I've been blocked, and then I have a stereotype about people who block me. Oh, this student must not really like me. But that turns out it wasn't the case at all. This student was really just a good student who had deactivated their Facebook for a while so they could focus on doing their tests. I had failed to, appraise the true nature of the situation. I missed out on this complexity, right, until I talked with the student. All right, if we have stereotypes, we're also likely to increase our misattributions. When I see a Turk throw out, some garbage on the side of the road, then it would make it easier to say, yeah, Turks are dirty, as opposed to thinking about other reasons that they may have done that. There might be a really good reason for doing that. Maybe they threw an apple core off the side because they want to treat a girl right there. I don't know. Also, stereotype threat. What is stereotype threat?
Saying something against your race.
Could you be more specific?
Saying something against your race.
Saying something against my race? So like
anxiety to be biased against your race.
Anxiety to be biased against your race. I think if you modify the sentence a little more, I would agree with you. Otherwise, I'm not sure. So like, I'm a white person and white people, we've killed a lot of other people. White people must be bad. Is this stereotype threat?
I think.
Yeah, please.
So I think if this exists, stereotype, I think black people are less intelligent than white people. Then I give them to test.
Yes.
I already have this belief. So and this the black person, he already knows that I have this belief. So he will be very anxious. He will not be good enough to perform well in the test.
Yes, that's exactly right. So the whole idea is, let's stick with the black-white example for a minute. So there's a stereotype that a lot of white people hold that blacks are dumb, right? And a lot of black people are aware that white people have this stereotype about them. So if you have Watson giving black people, Watson's a white guy, a test, here's your test, and you are aware that he thinks that you're dumb, how might you perform on that test? Why? I mean, if he thinks that you're dumb, isn't this your chance? Ha! Watson thinks I'm dumb, I'll show him. Ooh. Why would they perform less well? Why shouldn't they perform better? They're thinking about the person's perception of them instead of thinking about the test. This was what sort of like what I experienced when I was a mathlete in 7th or 8th grade. I experienced this in my psychology class. Last semester, oh my goodness, it was so awkward. A couple classes now we'll talk about Freudian defense mechanisms. And I said something about Islam. And then I was like, oh. And it's weird, like whenever I want to like bring in Islam in this context, like there's this barrier to saying something. I hesitate. And I didn't do that when I was in the States. When I was in the States, I want to say something about Islam, boom! I just say it. No problem! What's different?
You're a Muslim.
I'm in a Muslim country, that's right. So are there are there stereotypes that Muslims have about, what am I, kafir? Non-Muslim? Kafir? Non-Muslim? Are there stereotypes that Muslims have about non-Muslims?
Depends on what kind of.
I'm a non-Muslim from America. Are there stereotypes that Muslims here have about how America feels about Islam?
Yes.
What?
Terrorists.
Yeah, we think that you guys are a bunch of terrorists. We don't like you guys, right? So I know that this stereotype is out there. So when I want to say something, I'm like, oh crap, they're going to think that I don't like them. So it makes me teach less effectively when I'm under stereotype threat. I didn't have this problem when I talked about Islam in the States, but I did have it when I was talking about black students, because I had a lot of black students in the States. And in the States, like, there's this whole big, like, what word do you use? Like, is black racist? Am I saying the wrong thing? You should use African American. But I have some black students who aren't African American. They're Cuban American. Or they're a foreign exchange student from Africa. They're not American at all. But like, when I want to say something like for this class, that black people are athletic, I'd be like, and black people, it interferes with my ability to perform, because instead of worrying about what I'm trying to teach, I worry about how people are thinking I'm going to teach. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
In an academic setting, isn't it always better to avoid religion, especially if it's deciding what religion that is?
That's an excellent question, and people strongly believe different things about this. When I want to teach people about an issue, I try to relate it to things that they know about. Because if I can relate a theoretical concept in psychology to something that people already understand, then they can better understand the idea that I'm trying to present. Does that make sense?
No, I mean, especially when the issue is controversial, and when you know that the other side, okay, is not going to receive it well, is not going to be comfortable with that idea. And especially religion, because sometimes we had our own ideas of religion. And even about our own religion, they're not correct. So it's like it becomes, I don't know.
But when I talk about religion, I try very hard not to say that this is right or this is wrong from a moral standpoint or from any other standpoint. I try to stick with facts. Does that make sense? So, one of the reasons that I use controversial topics is actually related to something that we talked about very early on in class. Remember when we talked about memory and what types of things people remember well? What types of things do people remember very, very well? We talked about levels of processing, right? Levels of processing, things that are processed more deeply, I better remember. If I present something that's controversial, people will sit up more. Whoa, what's this? And they'll pay more attention. And by paying more attention, what should they do? If I've been successful, they'll learn it better. So I actually like using controversial topics in class sometimes because it can help people to learn better. This is why I talk about, what was it called? Distant intercessory prayer, right? Very controversial topic, but something that people are interested in, which can hopefully help them to better understand differences between what science is and what science is not. Cool? Bit off topic, but let's get this. Okay. Also related to stereotypes, we have the potential for increased antagonism. So, some people think that Muslims are terrorists, right? And if you think that Muslims are terrorists, how should you treat terrorists? Do you like say, hey man, you're a terrorist. Come on over to my house. Let me introduce you to my kids. No, right? No, what do you do if you think someone's a terrorist? You treat them poorly, right? Get out of here. We don't want your kind over here. Get out of here, you Muslim terrorist lady. Blech. Right? So this is a potential negative aspect of having stereotypes. And they're very serious real-world implications. So one of my colleagues from graduate school, Keith Payne, he did this very interesting study. He showed college students pictures of black faces or white faces. So here's a picture of a face, took the face away. And then he would show them a picture of something that was either a tool, here's a hammer, here's a drill, or a gun. And then he would mask it. Remember when we talked about masking earlier, you only present it briefly? I mean, if I present to you a picture of a gun for a second, you're going to be able to say, oh yeah, that's a gun. So you want to present this really, really quickly. Boom, what was it? What was it? Was it a gun or a tool? And we force you to make a response. Pick or choose, whether it's a gun or a tool. Does anyone have an idea about how people responded? Were they more or less likely to guess that the thing was a gun? More when
there's a black.
When there was a black person. That's exactly right. So think about a real-world scenario. This was a similar study. Imagine that you're a police officer and you see someone and they have something in their hand. Sorry, you can't see this very well. They have something in your hand and you want to talk to them for questioning. If that's a gun, what might you need to do? If it's a gun, American police have guns, the Turkish police have guns, they have automatic weapons. It's If they have a gun and they go like this, maybe they're going to try to shoot you, right? So if you perceive this as a gun and they're making this movement, which could be a threat, your life could end. So this could increase the likelihood that the police officer says, freeze, and then boom, shoots them. When in actuality, it might just be a cell phone. And they're going like this because they're going to say, dude, a police is coming, has got me. Please send someone out here. I don't want him to shoot me. Right? So by making this movement, if there's this bias where people can't really tell whether it's a gun or not, this can lead to people getting killed for no reason. This happens all the time in the States. You hear the story about some minority person getting shot because the police had, or thought that the person had a weapon when it turned out to be a cell phone or a bottle of water or something else. Okay, so in-group versus out-group. The idea with in-group versus out-group is that other people are often seen as less desirable, likable, intelligent, positive than members of people like you. Right? So people like me, Americans, we're good. USA, we're number one. We're number one. Have you guys seen stuff like that in the news? Americans chanting we're number one. Right? So, we're the best. Turks, I come to Turkey. And who do I find out is actually the best? Turks are the best. You know the croissant that you thought was French? Sorry, the Ottomans made that. The Turks made that, and they gave it to Napoleon. You know the Native Americans? They're not Native Americans, they're Turks. They went up. Right? Turks, we're number one. Everyone else is less. And the criteria for being a member of the in-group or out-group can be completely arbitrary and can depend on the situation that we're in. So I'm teacher, you are the students. The teachers, we're smart. You guys, maybe. What else? You can talk about Muslims versus non-Muslims, or you can throw us all in the same pot. We're all from Shahir, and if we have our Shahir football club playing against Bacha Shahir football club, we're the best. We're the best, right? So group membership can be completely arbitrary. Oh, if we don't get to the video, here's the link for it. Watch it. Very interesting. It's about how group membership can be influenced by something as simple as eye color. So they take these kids and they say, aha, you guys have blue eyes. You guys are the smart ones. Brown-eyed people are dumb. Brown-eyed people are lazy. And then the next day they switch it. Oops, sorry, I'm a teacher. I made a mistake. It's actually the blue-eyed people that are dumb and lazy. The brown-eyed people are smart. It's very, very interesting. So where did the stereotypes come from? Lots of times they come from someone's real observations of one or more members from some category. Why did I ever come up with the stereotype that Turks are dirty? In America, we didn't have stereotypes about Turks being dirty. There is a stereotype about Turks in America, but it's that they smoke a lot. We have a saying, smoke like a Turk. Why would anyone ever come up with that stereotype?
Because you went to a park and you saw that.
Yeah, I went to the park and I saw garbage all over the place. I went to the beach, I saw garbage all over the place. Yeah. Why would someone think that the Turks smoke a lot? Because you see a lot of people smoking. Does this mean that all Turks smoke? No, there's a huge movement in the school to get people to stop smoking, right? Wow, those black people are so athletic. Oh, well, if you look at, basketball teams, you make observations and you can draw inferences that you can then inappropriately generalize and apply to all people. Oh, Asian people are smart. If you look at the mathematics performance, oh, look at who's up top. Hong Kong, Finland, not Asian. And then South Korea. Well, 2 of the top 3 are Asians. Wow. So there's some real data supporting some stereotypes. But even those data miss out on the complexities that are inherent in the real world. Oh man, all Turks look alike. All Chinese people look alike? So when I meet people from, I'm going to use a couple stereotypes in this one. When I meet people from the Black Sea region, I often ask them, "Siz Türk musunuz? Are you Turkish? Why?"
Because they are talking different. They are talking.
I can't tell the difference in the language. I don't hear the difference.
Facial expressions are different from Australian stuff.
I haven't noticed the facial expressions either.
They look different. They're like white.
Yeah, so you have that stereotype too. So people from the Black Sea region, more of them have blonder hair and bluer eyes, right? So I have a stereotype about Turks. They have dark hair, they have brown eyes. Dude, are you a Turk? Look at your hair, it's so blonde. Right, so there's this thing called own race bias, where people are better at identifying faces from members of their own race. This is interesting. Babies show this. Babies that are just a few months old demonstrate own race bias. Why? Most of the time, you're seeing people that are around you, right? And if you're a baby, the people that are around you most are people that share your race, right? So you're getting a lot more exposure to people of your race than you are of people of other races. So you might expect less on race bias with people who've been brought up with members of other races. So sometimes white families in very white communities will adopt black kids. And sometimes vice versa. So which group of people should those kids be especially good at identifying? The people of the race with whom they've been brought up most. Alright, stereotypes can be a real pain in the butt because we have this confirmation bias, which is a tendency for people to notice information that fits into their pre-existing schemas. So I go to the park and I see some trash, and that fits in my schemas very nicely, right? Yeah. Of course it's there. Boop. And a tendency for people to interpret information in a way that maintains their pre-existing schemas. So I go to a different park that's clean. Do I notice this? I may not pay attention, or I may notice it, and then what do I say if I notice it? Why is the park clean? Is it that Turks are clean, if I have that stereotype?
Maybe it's owned by Americans.
Maybe it's owned by Americans. When I first came here, actually, I thought Istanbul was exceptionally clean. I was amazed. I was like, wow, it's so clean. So much cleaner than Chicago. So much cleaner than Chicago. And then as I started walking to and from school every day, I saw the people. And they have lots of people sweeping and cleaning up and picking up other people's trash, right? So if I get to a park and I see that it's clean, it would be very easy for me to say, aha, it's just being cleaned by someone else, right? Which would maintain my stereotype. Did you see that? That Turk just threw that garbage on the ground. That's just like those dirty Turks. But you're not like those other Turks. I know you. I've seen you. You've been on the bache, and you brought your trash back. So, it's not all Turks. You're a special exception to the rule. So let's talk about assimilation versus accommodation. This is related to processing new information. So let's use a racial stereotype as an example. Black people are less intelligent, right? Watson thinks that. So you get some new information. Barack Obama, who is, most people would call him black, and you see his debates and his speeches, right? His speeches are very well thought out, and he delivers them very, very well. And there's a different stereotype, right? That people who are intelligent give good speeches. You don't have an idiot giving a great speech, right? So, how do we interpret this new information? If we assimilate, then the interpretation of the new information preserves our existing schemas. We make an exception to the rule. We say, aha, Obama, he's so well spoken. He's so eloquent for a black person. Notice, right, the black people are dumb. He's just the lucky one that's not. Instead, if we accommodate, what do we have to do? If we accommodate, we interpret the new information to alter our schemas. This can be difficult because we already have these beliefs. So if we get new information that disagree with our beliefs, this can be a threat, sometimes painful. But if you can accommodate, then you might say, dude, I was totally wrong. No, it's not that black people are dumb. It's not I was dumb for thinking that black people were dumb. Are you a racist, sexist, a nationalist? How can you measure whether someone has a stereotype? There are a couple ways we can do it. One way is explicitly. I can just ask you, are you racist? She shakes her head no. Are you a sexist? No? What's the other one? Are you a nationalist? Yes, yeah. Lots of times if you ask people explicitly, if you ask people if they're racist, they will say no. Why? Because being a racist is something that people have negative stereotypes about, right? It's something that's looked socially down upon. So no one wants to admit that they're racist. So you ask them, are you racist? No, man, I'm not a racist. Dude, I'm not a racist. And people will give you potentially wrong answers. So you can do this implicitly instead. You don't have to ask them directly. You can have them do something else where the question is hidden. Right? So this guns, tools test with black and white faces, this actually can measure racism. If they're not racist, then the color of the face should have no effect on their ability to determine whether or not it's a tool or a gun, right? There should only be an effect if people think about black people differently from white people, indicating that they're racist. But notice, I never asked you, are you a racist? They might have no idea what I'm actually looking at. The implicit association test is another example of an implicit test to measure racism, sexism, nationalism, whatever. So the idea is we're going to give people two tasks. We're going to show people a picture of a woman or man. So this was going to test sexism, not racism. So we're going to show them a man or a woman. And we're going to tell them, if it's a man, press this button. If it's a woman, you press this button. Okay, it's easy. And we're going to show it to them for like a second. So no problem. Man, man, woman, man, easy. At the same time, we're going to have another task. We're going to ask them to tell us whether a word is good or bad. War. Bad. Peace.
Good.
Love.
Good.
Harmony. Murder.
Bad.
Easy, right? Really, really simple. Now, we have them both doing both of these tasks at the same time. Now, sometimes the bad words are going to be associated with the men, right? So press this button if it's a man or a bad word. Press this button if it's a woman or a good word. And then later we're going to switch it. We'll have press this button if it's a woman or a bad word, and this button if it's a man or a good word. Does that make sense? Now the whole idea here is if you have negative feelings towards women, then it will be easier for you to do women bad when women and bad are together. Because if you get women good, you're thinking, okay, woman this one, but good is over here. Which one is it? Does that make sense? And this is actually a really, really powerful way of looking at a whole bunch of different isms. They have Turkey versus others isms examples on a website. Changing stereotypes can be really hard. In order to change stereotypes, you need to change schemas. This involves accommodation, which can be difficult. You need often lots of social reinforcement to this. You have to overcome confirmation bias. There are things that you can do consciously to overcome this. So think about Seligman's learned optimism hypothesis. Part of that was that you need to question your attributions, right? It's a conscious thing. We can do this with our stereotypes too. Aha, this Turk just threw a piece of garbage out on the trash. I can question myself. Wait, does that really mean that Turks are dirty? Does that one person who threw out garbage, does that person speak for the whole? So you can consciously do this. Other things you can do is you can travel. You can immerse yourself in cultures of other people. And by doing this, you can come across lots of evidence that could potentially overcome your pre-existing stereotypes. Imagine classical conditioning, right? So you put two things together, and you're brought up in a society that says black, bad, black, bad, black, bad, black, bad. So you build up this strong association between black and bad, right? You want to get over this. From classical conditioning, what you need to do is encounter the conditioned stimulus without the unconditioned stimulus. So how can you do this? Go hang out with a whole bunch of black friends and then see black, good, black, neutral, black, good. And you should experience extinction, where you lose that association that you had previously. Next class we'll talk about aging.